Citizens Review Committee to order. Let's see, it's a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to hear from members of our community regarding potential changes to the charter of the city of Lubbock. Before we get started, Amy, will I get a sign-up sheet to go through that? How are we going to do that?
Yes, there is a sign-up sheet for people who wish to speak. Courtney's bringing up one, but we're going to keep one out there for a while
Okay.
for people
Perfect.
who come.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, we've got 350 people. I'm just kidding. We've got 16 people signed up so far to speak. Before we get started, just a few ground rules, kind of some things I want to remind people about. Number one, at the last public hearing, we took a brief recess and came back from recess. And when I came back, I reminded everybody, or informed everybody, the two things that were mainly discussed at the last public hearing: adding 2 city council members, adding 2 seats at large, extending the term of the mayor. Those are not in our scope. Those are not under consideration in this committee. And I wanted to make that clear. So if you're here to talk about those 2 things, I'd ask that you let us get through the meeting and talk about some other things that might be in our scope, which we know what those are, but those 2 aren't. And so I want to make that kind of clear so everybody knows kind of where we're coming from. We're still going to follow the ruling that was mentioned in the AJ, and that ruling prohibits us from adding 2 seats to the city council in that large position and messing with the term of the mayor. So those are going to stay in place. So the second thing I want to ask you guys and request is there's going to be a lot of differences of opinion spoken here today, possibly. So if you're for one thing and somebody else gets up and speaks against it, let's respect everybody's opinion. We're not here to vote on anything tonight. We don't need to measure by applause who agrees and who doesn't. So I would just ask that we listen politely. You can disagree in your mind. You can think, I don't like this agreement, whatever. But let's just be peaceful about it and respect everybody's differences of opinion. We're all Lubbock citizens. We're all Texans, and we're all Americans. So let's treat each other with respect and dignity. So with that being said, I'd like to open it up to the dais. If anybody has any opening comments or remarks you'd like to make before we get started hearing from our community. None from you. Bill? Okay, well, let's get going. Mr. Jim Beck has signed up to speak. He was the first one. And David Haynes, right? Okay. Okay, sure.
My name is Jim Beck, 5632 Duke Street.
David Haynes, 6900 Gary Avenue. We'd like to appreciate this opportunity. The expressions that we're making is representative of 34 ministers and pastors. And so since you made the statement, forgive us for responding to what you've already mentioned. Is that okay? Okay. The Lubbock Roundtable, which we represent, is a diverse group of pastors and ministers in our city. We began meeting in June of 2020 with the goal of fostering relationships, encourage and promote righteousness and justice in our community, and to pursue reconciliation and healing among all people. Our desire is to model what God intended from the very beginning. Furthermore, we are committed to healing and reconciliation, first among ourselves, and then to all within the circle of our influence. We are committed to creating and cultivating a kingdom perspective, excuse me, as to what God has said and how to apply his timeless truth to these current circumstances. We appreciate the outcome of the first committee meeting. Your actions of removing member consideration, from the table serve to keep us as a city from going backwards. More specifically, avoiding a time where our racial differences seem to set agendas aimed at maintaining power and control for some, often at the expense of others.
Although we appreciate the fact that injustice averted is a good thing, it's still not justice achieved. The stark evidence of the old roots of racism are still evident and troubling if we just take a drive east of Avenue C and north of 16th Street. The absence of commercial growth and opportunity amid toxic industrialization continues to oppress segments of our fair city in poverty, exploitation, and hopelessness. We, the signed here, the 34, believe Lubbock can do better. Hence, reforming the mayoral and council pay system is a step towards positive change. As many spoke during the first meeting, the present system limits the candidate pool to the independently wealthy, retired, or persons with outside funding expectations, promoting them and selective agendas. A living wage system will allow persons from all walks of life to enter the possibility of service to all of Lubbock's citizens and communities. As faith leaders in this city of the Round Table of Lubbock, we implore you to enact righteous principles, and we pray the blessing of Psalm 106:3 over each of you and the extending council as well. But blessed are those who act justly, who always do what is right. The history of injustice and inequity in Lubbock has left painful scars in need of healing. May we be the generation that will take those scars seriously and be eager to remember the marginalized, neglected, and the excluded in our city. We sincerely thank you for your service, and moreover, for your attentiveness to the collective voices, and the clarion call for justice is greatly appreciated. And we pray that God will give us all ears to hear. This is signed, or the names of 34, and that is not an exhaustive list, of 34 ministers and faith leaders in Lubbock are attached, and we thank you for your time. If we may, can we submit a copy of this? You got it? Okay, very good. Okay.
Thank you,
so
Ms. Tain.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beck. Yeah, members of the committee, we do have the roundtable response to charter reforms on your dais, and the names of the pastors and those folks that support that are on the back of that. Okay, thank you. Next we have Mr. Adam Hernandez.
Good evening, committee. My name is Adam Hernandez, currently living in the 7400 block of Avenue X. I am the communications chair on the board of Lubbock Compact. So at the last public hearing, the committee requested some specifics about the requests we and many other citizens had, especially concerning city council pay. So let's get into the specifics of our requests. First, there seemed to be some confusion about what exactly is meant by a living wage. If we take the dictionary definition, it means a wage that is high enough to maintain a normal standard of living. I think we can all agree that $75 per month for the mayor and $25 per month for city council members won't cover what most would consider a normal standard of living, even for one person, let alone if they have a family to take care of. So what does cover a normal standard of living, and what would a normal standard of living be? So I've given you all, you all have some printouts there that I have, and I'm just going to go through them in order here. So for this, we can look at the family budget calculator that's on the Economic Policy Institute website. So for those who aren't aware, the Economic Policy Institute, or EPI, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank created in 1986 to include the needs of low and middle income workers in economic policy discussions. EPI believes every working person deserves a good job with fair pay, affordable health care, and retirement security. To achieve this goal, EPI conducts research and analysis on the economic status of working America. That's from their website. So according to them, quote, EPI's family budget calculator measures the income a family needs in order to attain a modest yet adequate standard of living. The budgets estimate community-specific costs for 10 family types, 1 or 2 adults with 0 to 4 children, in all counties and metro areas in the United States. Compared with the federal poverty line and the supplemental poverty measure, EPI's family budgets provide a more accurate and complete measure of economic security in America. Again, that's from their website. So just some background on that. So you can go to their website. I have the link there if you guys want to check this out yourself. But it says for a family of 2 adults and 2 children in Lubbock County, that a modest yet adequate standard of living costs $72,379 annually. For 1 adult and 1 child, it's $50,060, and for 1 adult and no children, it's $33,224. So then the second page you have there, we can also look at United Way of Lubbock's community status report that says, quote, per the U.S. Census Bureau, the median household income from 2014 to 2018 in Lubbock County was $50,473. Yet the estimated household survival budget for a family of 4 in Lubbock County is $51,864. This reflects the bare minimum a household needs to live and work today. It does not include savings for emergencies, future goals, or unexpected global pandemics. We also have the results, which is the third page there. We have the results of Lubbock Compact's citizen poll that we started last year in November on this very issue. There were 3 pre-populated choices on our poll, which were $30,000 per year, $60,000 per year, and $100,000 per year. There was also an option for respondents to input their own number. Of the 231 total responses from all 6 districts of Lubbock, 65% approved of an annual salary of $60,000 per year for city council positions. And for those that are curious, it doesn't show it on there because it's really small. Less than 1% actually approved of no raise, or actually $0, which is not even $0 now. So now that we've seen some data from some different sources that address what a living wage means and what many citizens would support, I'd like to address a question that was posed in the handout you all were given in the meeting on April 7th. The question and some information that can be used to answer it are as follows. The question is there a demonstrated problem over a period of time that detracts from the efficient operations of Lubbock government? The short answer is yes, and the period of time that there have been demonstrated problems with the efficiency of government is over 100 years. I'll spare you all the entire history, but I'll give some recent and relevant examples. Luckily for us, efficiency can be quantified by math. So if we study this strictly from the standpoint of the average age of Lubbock citizens and the representation for citizens on the city council, we can see a glaring inefficiency. According to the United States Census Bureau, the average age in Lubbock is 29.6 years, so basically 30 years old. Not one time in Lubbock's entire history has there ever been a city council representative that was even close to the age of 30. So if one of the purposes of a city council is to be a representation of all of its constituents, we have until now had a 0% efficiency rate in having representation for a large portion of the people who live here. So Laredo, Texas, which we brought up as an example last time, is very similar to Lubbock in population size, has the same city council and city manager set up as we do, and whose citizens' average age is 28.9 years old, pays their mayor $75,000 per year, and their city council members $50,000 per year. If you look at their city website, you can see right away that their council is much more diverse in the ages of those serving than Lubbock's has ever been. At least 5 of the 9 total council members look to be under the age of 40. Some of them may even be closer to the age of 30. I think it's pretty safe to say that those same folks would probably not be able to serve at their age if they weren't paid a living wage, unless things work differently in Laredo than they do in the rest of the world. Also, judging by the accomplishments shown on their website, Laredo does not seem to be hurting as a result of them paying their government a living wage either. And since they have the same type of government setup as we do, it would probably not be a stretch of the imagination to assume that their workload and duties are very similar to that of our city council. Now, if we look at efficiency from the standpoint of the equitable distribution of resources, which is controlled by city council votes, we know for a fact that due to the way the Gateway Street Projects Fund was used after its creation in 2004, that over $120 million in counting have gone primarily to districts 4, 5, and 6 for the purpose of new developments, while districts 1, 2, and 3 have dealt with crumbling infrastructure, loss of schools and other resources, and have seen little to no revitalization, all while our tax dollars go to help pay the associated debts of this arrangement. We can also see that this trend has not slowed down since then, as more and more resources continue to go primarily to 3 of our 6 total districts. So it looks like we're currently at a 50% efficiency rate in the equitable distribution of resources. If we had scores of 50% in school, we'd be considered failing. If our businesses, cars, or houses were operating at 50% efficiency, we'd be very concerned and would not turn a blind eye to it. If the committee would like more information on all of this, I'll direct you all to the Lubbock Disparity Report, which goes into much more detail. There's also plenty of other documentation we could provide you with. So to be frank, many city council members that have served the city of Lubbock have often worked very hard to appease special interest groups while outright ignoring the wishes and needs of citizens who don't have the same economic or political resources. If it were a practical possibility for more people from a working class or a middle class background to hold these offices, they would be much less likely to vote against the interests of their family, friends, and neighbors, and their priorities would likely be much different than the priorities of the top 1% to 2% earners in our city, which would lead to the meaningful changes that have been out of reach for Lubbock's older communities like East, North, and Central Lubbock inside the loop. So right now there's a clear disconnect between the city council and the constituents it serves. This is undeniable. You all have the power to start the process that can change this. If I'm to believe what I've heard from many city staff members and city council members I've spoken with personally, it is their intention and desire to be as accessible to the citizens as possible. There's definitely room for improvement in this area by all accounts. There are actions we can take right now in this charter reform process to move closer to that goal, one of which would be to pay these positions a living wage. The other action in our second request here that we can take is to modernize the process of bringing items in front of the city council for consideration and voting. The citizen petition process contained in Article 4, Section 1 of the charter titled Initiative and Referendum should be updated to allow for participatory democracy while protecting taxpayer money from potential litigation costs. Instead of requiring a number of signatures equal to 25% of the previous election's voter turnout, the required amount should be 4% of the total registered voters, which would fluctuate much less frequently and significantly. Also, signatures should be allowed to be collected digitally because we are in 2021. And finally, citizen ordinances that gather the required number of signatures that are not passed by the city council should not be eligible for a ballot initiative unless the ordinance is vetted for legality by the city attorney. So that's our 2 requests and some information to go along with it.
Thank you. One question real
I
quick.
got a question too for you, so.
So of the poll that you have here, 231 responses from all 6 districts for Lubbock, do you have an allocation of votes across districts, the
I
council
could get
district?
that. I don't have it
Okay.
figured out, but I can get that. Sir.
Thank you for coming, by the way. I appreciate it. A lot of the questions have come up on the living wage, right? And we're here to understand and learn basically what you guys are trying to tell us to do, right? But how, and most of the questions that are coming up also are wondering how you're going to keep the city council and mayor independent of the city of Lubbock. Who's going to be the boss? Have y'all thought about that?
The boss would be the citizens.
Right? It's going to still stay the citizens. So how do they keep independent of the city?
What do you mean, how do they keep independent?
Well, most of the questions and people that have emailed me were wondering, okay, so if we gave these guys a living wage, right? What's not the city to tell them, well, this is the way you're going to vote. This is what you're going to do. You follow me so far?
Sure. The problem with that line of logic is that the citizens, again, decide who sits in these seats. So you have, if you're a city council member, you have 4 years. If the mayor, you have 2 years to let the people know through your actions if you deserve to have that job. And if you don't, in their eyes, if they deem you unfit for that job, they can remove you from that job or fire you by not voting you in again.
That's the way I want to keep it that way. I mean, we want to see, of course, hear more, right? But we also want to keep them independent of the city and also remain the fact that it will be the citizens that decide their fate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we've got Mr. Bill Felton. Good evening.
Yeah, I'm 9505 Viola. It's Regent Street Park, and Karen here is a neighbor of mine and did a great job on council. And I think that's really the most important thing, is to find out what former councilmen and mayors think about what would be a reasonable salary and also what the workload is. Now, can someone tell me, of the 6 council districts, has there been any parity attempt made here? I mean, in my own precinct of 111, I've got 2,257 people. So I'm wondering, and maybe Becky has the numbers. Becky, as far as the numbers in each district, are they comparable? Because if, you know, one district has twice as many, that's twice as much grief.
Right.
So are they fairly close, or if they're not, is there any attempt to have parity among the 6 districts? That to me
Mr.
is
Chair,
important.
could I respond to that? So as a government, a city, we have to go through what's called redistricting every 10 years. And it's coming up and we're getting ready to redistrict. And part of what that does is to protect the voters, the equal votes. And what they try to do with redistricting is equalize the number of population or voters, adult people in each district. It's been 10 years since that's been done. It's coming up again, and that's why the districts change just about every 10 years.
Yeah, because there had to be some realignment probably of the precincts to have parity among all 6 districts, yeah. Okay, I'm probably one of the few people that's going to be able to speak tonight from past experiences being on council and mayor, not of this city, of course, but back east. I was mayor and councilman at large at Northfield, New Jersey. It's a suburb, one of the bedroom communities of Atlantic City. And it was a little different setup there. We had 7 councilmen and 1 mayor. The mayor did not vote unless there was a tie vote among council. Somebody didn't show up, it's 3-3 or something. We had 2 wards. There were 3 councilmen in each ward, and I was at large. So when it came time, when the mayor in office ahead of me resigned for personal reasons a year early, our club had a vote on who should be nominated and put forth as the mayor, and then the council voted. And unfortunately, I having been at large, I had a better working in the city and had been to every house and so forth. So the council chose me over 3 really senior other people. But the difference is that the council people really didn't do much, and the mayor had very specific duties. In fact, my biggest job was running the police department. And it was in kind of bad shape when I took over, and many of the men had transfers out to go to Atlantic City or elsewhere. And fortunately, I was able to convince them to just, let's see how things go here. If you're unhappy with the leadership, why don't leave me. And consequently, I had to get rid of a chief, a deputy chief, a lieutenant, the worst sergeant, a couple of patrolmen. But the duties here, obviously, are you have a city manager, and it isn't quite the same thing. But I think that the pay now, and I think it's amazing that people would step forward and be public spirited citizens and serve like you did, Karen, for a couple terms for almost virtually nothing. And I really admire that. So it's long overdue that the council and the mayor receive an adequate pay. So it just doesn't have to be part-timers or people that are self-employed and have the luxury of, doing this and running the business through the family or something else. So, but there is a unintended consequence here, though. If you raise the salary to, really great heights. I think that the more salary you offer, the more applicants you're going to get. And I think Becky's going to have a lot more work. We normally have just one or two people running for a council position. But let me tell you, if you offer $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 or whatever comes out of this, you're not going to see any more one or two people, and you're going to have runoffs. And the problem with that is that if you get, for example, I did run for council in Houston. I hadn't been in Texas long. We came down here in '85. I didn't have any chance of winning, but I had reasons for running, and that is that the councilman for that area of Houston had been the only councilman in that part of Houston, which was Clear Lake, the NASA area. And I had a good friend in our church who eventually did win, but I ran against Mancuso because I have a problem about career politicians, and he had been the only one in that council. He had an ailing wife, and yet he's still trying to hang on. So anyway, I think there were about 12 of us that applied and ran for council. This was back in 1993. So I'm dating myself. But the good news is that Joe Roach, who was a friend of mine and my church, the Clear Lake Methodist, was in a runoff with Mancuso. And I worked hard for him. And fortunately, he did win. The sad thing about Joe, he had certainly a handicap. He was a dwarf, a real dwarf, and there was no one else in the family like that. In fact, he married a lovely girl, a dwarf, but he died very young. He did a great job on Houston Council. But my point is that 12 people, I'm not saying you're going to see 10 or 12 people in each district line up, but you're going to get some kibitzers, and you're going to get some people on ego trips, and you're going to get the people who think they have a following and their neighbors like them or some relatives, and it's going to be a different ball game. And that's all I'm saying. I don't know whether you've thought about these unintended consequences, but it's going to cost the city more money to have runoffs every time, for sure.
Thank you.
But I also believe, though, that an adequate salary is in order, and I know you'll use your best discretion in coming at a fair salary. So that's really all I have to say. Maybe I've said too much, but at least you know from the heart, I don't believe in reading things. If I can't say it outright and look at you in the eye to eye, then it doesn't mean too much.
Thank you,
Okay?
Mr. Felton. Thank you very much.
You have any questions for me?
No, we're just listening today. We're really not allowed,
Okay,
not
because
allowed. We're
he
just,
had a
yeah.
question, and I'm not trying to run away from questions.
That's okay. We appreciate it.
I'm not that kind of guy.
Thank
But,
you.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. Yeah, just a reminder, it was a good question, Jimmy, but we're to listen. We don't need to get, that's okay. That's okay. We don't need to engage in dialogue right now, but I appreciate your question. Okay, next up is Mr. Manny Flores.
Well, first of all, good evening, and thank you for doing this. I know we could all be doing something else besides being out here. And really the only reason I'm out here is because, again, this charter that's been in effect is almost 100 years old. Now, back then, $25 might have been good. 75, you were probably living in heaven. That's not the case, as it's been presented by Mr. Hernandez here and all that. Which I commend you for all your work you did. Again, a family of 2 or 3, even a family of 1, a person of 1, they can't live on $25 a month. They can't live on $75 a month. I mean, these guys, and when I mean guys, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, I'm just too Texan. When I say guys, I mean, they're in their chambers 20, 30 hours a week, on a normal week, I would think. When it comes down to special things that come up for them, or city budget or whatever, I'm sure it's nothing for them to be out there at their council for, 60, 70 hours a week, 50 to 60 hours a week. And for what, cents, a couple of cents an hour? I mean, is it fair for them? I know they know what they're getting into when they're running for office. Yes, there are some props that they get there, some, but is it enough to really cover their expenses, their life expenses? I don't think so. And for the things that these people go through, and I've told several people before, and I'm going to tell you guys too, when you're in the public eye, regardless to what you do, you're going to be wrong, simply because you can't satisfy everybody. You know, and if you do something right, people aren't going to say anything. But if you do something wrong, they're not going to let you forget it. You know, and that's just a fact. You know, and it's, you know, just people come up here and they give a lot of their time. I feel discriminated against in the sense that I can't run for office. I mean, I can, but I can't afford $25 a month. I can't afford $75 a month. And there's a lot of people younger than I that are more than qualified of running an office. Not that the city council is not doing a good job. I commend them. They're doing excellent, in my opinion. But again, it's really stopping a lot of people from running for office because of their pay. And I don't think that's right. You know, there's a lot of young people, and sometimes we need new ideas. Sometimes we need this new young blood to keep pushing us forward. You know, we need a good kick in the butt, I guess you could say, excuse my expression, but I mean, sometimes that's what we need, you know, to get up and really get going. Because a lot of times we get too complacent on what we're doing and we just do it, it's repetitious over and over. Well, that worked, let's keep doing it. Well, sometimes it doesn't. A new blood means new ideas. And, you know, hopefully the town was headed in the right direction, which I think it is. But again, we need more opinions. We need younger opinions. We need people that are going to go out there and really honestly hustle. And you know, offering them a reasonable pay. I think you could get really very qualified people running for office. I really do. And again, you know, please consider that, because they are, I mean, they are working. Ms. Gibson, you're in city council, and I know you, I mean, I know you spend hours, countless of hours out there. And I mean, it would have been great for you to have gotten paid. And,
Thank you.
But again, just, you know, consider that. Consider that they are, I mean, you would probably draw a lot more qualified citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Okay, next up, we have Nicholas Bergfeld.
My name is Nicholas Bergfeld. I live on the 2300 block of 23rd Street in Tech Terrace. And I'm just honestly really excited about this conversation today. I think for a lot of us, this was the conversation that we all wanted to have around this topic. It's a really celebratory moment in the opportunity to modernize the city of Lubbock's charter, something that has been so rarely done in our history. And so I think the work that y'all are going to do is incredibly, incredibly important. And I'm so thankful that these public hearings are happening and that you have the opportunity to hear from the citizens of Lubbock on this topic. So I'm here specifically to advocate for two issues. The first, and both of these are essential to modernizing and reinvigorating democracy in our community. The first being a living wage for the city council and mayor, and the other being reforming our outdated citizen petition process. The last public hearing, y'all requested some more detailed numbers on how we were thinking about this and how the citizenry was kind of interpreting the idea of a living wage. And so I tried to provide some of those numbers as well. And so to begin with, if we think about, if we paid our council and our mayor the equivalent that Laredo does, and starting from that point is how that I think about, you know, the city's budget and how can we kind of make some apples to apples comparisons. So if we paid them like Laredo, this would result in a 0.04% increase in the city's budgeted expenditures for the fiscal year of 2020 to 2021, which was $867,545,146 in the city's budget. If you told me that a 0.04% increase in expenditures, that the individuals overseeing $867,545,146 worth of expenditures would enable them to be able to spend full-time activities in managing and being great stewards of that $867 million, I would say that's a good deal overall. If the ability to put 0.04% additional expenditures allowed for us to be better stewards of that gigantic pot of money, it seems as though we're getting a very good buy, and that is money well spent. Lubbock is a city that is too large to be run part-time. Routine decisions our city council make have multi-million-dollar implications. To put this minuscule amount of financing into perspective, the amount of money collected last year in bingo taxes, so we charge bingo parlors in Lubbock, would cover about 2/3 of the expenses of paying for the city council's living wage salary and the mayor's salary. The amount of revenue generated from the sale of abandoned vehicles last year for the city of Lubbock would pay for this amount 3 times over. What does Lubbock's democracy lose because this measly 0.04% is currently not paid? It's a lot. Over the past 10 years, on average, one city council position in each election cycle runs unopposed. 3 members of our current city council have won unopposed elections. It's also telling to see that when our city council races do have a challenger, that they are very competitive and rarely result in landslides. In fact, 2 of our current city council members have won their elections by 5 votes or less. Because of this 0.04%, the number of Lubbock citizens that decide to run for office is a very limited pool. If we were to make a rough estimate based on census data, it's only about 20% at maximum of Lubbock's adult population could even consider running for either for a city council or a mayor position because they are either retired or part of the high net worth community that exists within the city of Lubbock. This isn't to say that the opinions of Lubbock's rich and elite don't matter, but it is hard to argue how in touch they are with everyday struggles of most of our citizens. Citizens that the United Way of Lubbock, as Adam Hernandez had mentioned, estimates that about 40% of them are living paycheck to paycheck in their annual community needs assessment report. What all this means is that the voices representative of most of Lubbock never make it to the stage of even running for an election. If you look at Lubbock's industries of most common employment and our median household income, Lubbock is overwhelmingly a working class town. I can think of multiple examples where individuals from blue collar and working class backgrounds could have made significant contributions to our city council. Let's consider, when was the last time an electrician was on the city council? Surely they would have had something to say during the years the council used LP&L like a piggy bank and used over $100 million in utility fees to build roads, rather than upgrading our aging power generating capacity. Who is excited about joining ERCOT now? When was the last time an elementary school teacher was a city council member? When LISD's president of Board of Trustees, Zach Brady, says that our schools and educational conditions have deteriorated to the point where LISD is indistinguishable from any failing inner city school district, it seems like having someone who had been in the trenches recently would have enormous value to the decision-making process. When was the last time a plumber or a civil engineer was a city council member? I was once told by a member of the Water Conservation Resources Board that Lubbock has spent upwards of over $60 million in unplanned water drainage issues because there was no clear oversight of how the new South Lubbock subdivisions were being developed. It seems like having a policymaker with that kind of background would have paid for itself many times over. When was the last daycare provider on the city council? One of the biggest unaddressed challenges in our community is the abnormally high percentage of single mothers, a population that the YWCA's Status of Women report estimates 40% live in poverty. If we continue not to pay these positions, we're likely never to hear from people with these lived experiences on our council. And all it would take to fix this is 0.04%. That sounds like a bargain to me. The other issue I want to address is the antiquated citizen petition process included in our charter. It is essential for a thriving democracy to have a functional process that issues within a community can be brought to the city council in the form of a proposed ordinance. The challenge with our current process is that it's inconsistent and allows for the exploitation of low voter turnout to pass illegal ordinances through costly ballot initiatives. Right now, we are about to witness one of these costly ballot initiatives, the cost of which will ultimately be in the millions of dollars in prolonged legal battles. It should be easy for citizen ordinances to be proposed to the city council, but only ordinances that have been legally vetted should be allowed to go to a ballot initiative. I'm mindful that the May special election is a product of a signature process that only took place in a handful of megachurches in the city of Lubbock. And as someone who grew up in Lubbock, I'm also mindful of the fact that those elements of our community made us one of the last dry counties in the United States. Now that they recognize they can manipulate city government for their own agenda, it's easy to foresee many more illegal ordinances or stances being made going forward. Besides making sure our antiquated charter doesn't continue to make us rack up millions in legal fees, we also need to address the wild fluctuations in the number of signatures needed for a successful petition. Instead of basing the threshold of voter turnout in the last election, it could be pegged to a stable number like the number of registered voters. Choosing a 4% threshold is neither aggressively low or high. Lubbock County currently has 178,968 registered voters, so the current number of needed signatures would be somewhere in the 6,000 to 7,000 range. Very reasonable for a city our size for a petition process. And finally, allow for Lubbock citizens to sign petitions digitally. Now, with a legal vetting mechanism in place, there's no risk of Lubbock's democratic process being hijacked for other purposes. With this concern gone, we should focus on what are best practices for participatory democracy. The consideration of a single citizen ordinance by the City Council does not take a significant amount of time. There's no concerns that these would overburden the council with decision-making. Those are all my prepared remarks. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide comment, and I look forward to watching this process go forward.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Okay, next we have Mr. Kyle Jacobson.
Good evening, committee members. My name is Kyle Jacobson. I live on the 5200 block of 26th Street here in Lubbock, and I'm proud to work for the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce. I'll do my best to be brief and respectful of everyone's time tonight. Tonight, the Chamber will take a public position on the issue of a pay adjustment for the mayor and council. Despite what you may have heard at the first public hearing a couple weeks ago, this will be the first position we take on any potential issues that might come before this committee. Before I outline our position on this, I'd like to take the opportunity to clear the air about several false claims that were made at the first public hearing a couple weeks ago. I was out of town for work, otherwise would have been happy to clear this up sooner. As you know, the Chamber conducted a survey to gauge public opinion on a handful of topics that might wind up coming before this committee. I have a copy of that. I think it was distributed to y'all, but if anybody needs it. And since that time, we've learned that several of those topics or questions are off the table, and so that kind of renders the conversation moot anyway. But I still think it's important for the committee and for the public to have the facts straight about our survey. It was mentioned during the first public hearing that a majority of our survey respondents were against raising pay for the council because they were independently wealthy business owners. First, as is clearly shown in the results you've been provided, the vast majority of respondents are in favor of some form of pay increase for the mayor and council, 82% to be exact. Second, the vast majority of our members are not independently wealthy business owners, but are everyday employees, like many in this room and across Lubbock. I'm not sure how the person who made the claims about our survey makeup thought he knew the identities of our respondents, as those are not shared with anybody and are anonymous. Other speakers claimed that the chamber survey was directed at a receptive audience and the respondents were limited to people who are members of the chamber. The truth is that the survey was distributed via email to more than 4,000 diverse respondents from all walks of life and all corners of Lubbock. It was also distributed on publicly available social media channels, and respondents were encouraged to share the survey link with friends, families, and colleagues. Simply stated, it was distributed to as wide of an audience as we know how to reach. I don't want to get too much into this because you already mentioned that this issue won't be considered, but the at-large council districts came up quite a bit in the first public hearing. It was a common theme, and just wanted on the record out there that we did not advocate for or against that. It was simply a question included to gather public feedback. We send out surveys of all kinds. Sent out an air travel study in 2019, for example, trying to gauge feedback about how people fly, which airlines they fly with. And so the answer choices included are not necessarily endorsements of or opposition to airlines in that specific example. It's merely a mechanism to gather public feedback. Lastly, a claim that was particularly inaccurate was that the Lubbock Chamber, by sending out its survey, was engaging in an attempt of voter suppression. If our goal at the chamber was ever to suppress the vote, we must be pretty bad at it. Every election cycle, the chamber sends out countless public reminders about key election dates, such as deadlines to register to vote, when early voting places are open and where they're located, as well as polling locations and hours of operation on election day. We have staff members who have certified with the Lubbock County Elections Office as volunteer deputy registrars, allowing us to directly register people to vote here in Lubbock County. We've opened our doors at the office to anyone who would like to register. We've offered to come directly to anybody's workplace to get them registered. We've gone on campus at Lubbock Christian University to help their students get registered. We work diligently to encourage people to vote, which is why the claims from 2 weeks ago seem far from accurate. Some will insist that the questions in our survey imply endorsement or opposition to the topics included in those questions. Every year, the chamber publishes its public policy guide. I have one right here. I'd be happy to distribute it to the committee. It's also available on our website. We have an active blog on our website, which focuses on public policy issues. A recently launched podcast that touches on government affairs and policy issues, and publicly available social media accounts, which often discuss and demonstrate our positions on a variety of issues. We're available to local media and participate in interviews, news conferences, op-eds. All that to say, when we take a stance on something, it will be very apparent and nobody will need to rely on hearsay to determine where we stand. Having said all that, the Lubbock Chamber thinks it is reasonable to have some sort of pay adjustment for the mayor and council, as their pay has not been updated in more than 100 years. The two most popular answers provided by the public when we conducted our survey were a pay adjustment that brings us in line with the median for other large cities across Texas. I have the data on that for the top 25 cities in Texas if the committee needs that. As well as the second most popular option was a pay adjustment commensurate with inflation from the time the charter was authored. Our respondents are overwhelmingly against a full-time salary for these positions and wish to maintain the feature of our system that these positions be filled out of a desire to serve the public and not the desire to collect a paycheck. An adequate stipend that complements someone working full-time apart from their position on the council is the best way forward. I don't have a particular dollar amount to recommend to the committee. I'm sure y'all can come up with that. But the median for the top 25 most populous cities across the state would come out to $6,900 a year for the mayor and $3,600 a year for the council. And an inflation adjustment would come out to roughly $24,000 a year for the mayor and $8,000 for the council. And that is per an inflation calculator provided by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The chamber could support something in line with these amounts, and thanks to the committee for its efforts and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Okay, next we have let's see, we have Miss Victoria Whitehead. Could you state your address for the record, please?
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Victoria Whitehead, and I live on the 4400 block of 11th Street. First off, I want to thank you for your service. I've had the honor as a member of this community serving on 2 committees, and the census one is still going on. But I know what it takes to do this job, and I thank you for your time and for listening to the public. I'm a member of the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce's Young Professionals Committee. As a young professionals organization, part of our mission is to demonstrate the ways that Lubbock is a great place to have a career and a family, and also a place to support young working people. For so long, we as a city have said, let's market to millennials. Let's grow this place. Our committee is dedicated to seeing that that's there and ensured in growing. We're also working to get young people involved in public policy process, making sure they're registered to vote, informing them about important issues, encouraging them to speak at public hearings like this, and even running for office someday, if that is their goals. I have been so empowered as a member of the chamber to speak on behalf of our community. So I'm very thankful for the role that they play in giving us that voice. We think as an adjustment of compensation for the mayor and city council could act as a catalyst to encourage more people to run for office. However, even I and fellow members of the committee and the Lubbock Chamber do not support a full-time salary for members of the council. And the candidate's primary reason should remain service to the public. The positions of mayor and city council have not traditionally attracted many people like myself, someone in their 30s, early to mid stages of career, a toddler running at home. It's tough to sometimes advertise the benefits of running for office, but service to the community is something that we do believe is very important. Some people my age are not necessarily also in a position in their job where they can step away for several hours a week. Therefore, we think some form of pay increase, like adjusting for inflation for when the charter was authored, or bringing Lubbock in line with median council pay for other large cities, could be a fair approach to attract a more diverse pool of candidates. I'm thankful, as someone who worked on the census efforts, hearing the comments. The average age in Lubbock is 29. I really think about the policies and how we manage fiscally in our growth and in our development, what it would look like if we had some more 30-year-olds on committee. Therefore, I would like to just say this approach would allow for a more diverse group of people to join, to also stay in their full-time jobs, to contribute how they are in the economic and viable business growth of our community, but also more fairly compensate for the time that they're away from office. So thank you for your time and your efforts to help the Lubbock City Council in this effort.
Thank you, Ms. Whitehead.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Ms. Rose Wilson.
Good afternoon, all you lovely people up there. And when I get through, I hope y'all agree with me what I'm fixing to say. I've heard so many good things already, but my thing, what I come to say tonight, I came to Lubbock in 1955. I raised my kids here. When I came to Lubbock, it was cotton. Oh, can I? Not sure how it works. Okay, okay. When I came to Lubbock in 1955 with my family, I raised my family here. It was cotton fields all over. There wasn't a 50th Street. There was just a 34th Street, and it had cotton everywhere. So I have seen Lubbock grow. It has grown so huge that we need more help and more help. And I'm glad to be a Lubbockite. I'm glad because I live here in Lubbock. I've raised my kids here in Lubbock. And I come in support of my city council people. I come in support of the mayor because I was shocked when I was told, you know, they still getting $25. No, they're not. Somebody told me they got a raise. No, they didn't. Well, I feel like that is ridiculous. We got too much money floating around here in Lubbock, Texas. Those people serving on city council, they must be pretty good because every time there's election, some of them win their seats right back. And they wouldn't get those seats if they wasn't doing something good in the community. And I just feel like right now, with the cost of living going sky high, ain't no way, even a teenager wouldn't want you to give them $25. They look at you like you're crazy. You say, you know, if they don't have a job. So I'm in support of our city manager, our city mayor, the city council people, and especially in my district. I know what my district person is doing. I know how hard she works. And I know the work of all of those around here. And I feel it is time. Now, you all don't want me to set a price, what y'all should give her. But you all know what's right. And I know that you all will see. I don't know what the charter say. I don't care what the charter say. I know it is time for them to get a cost of living. Because those that have retired, they still have things to do. Those that in their own business, they still have things to do. Some of them have to get up and go from their families, maybe sitting down, eating dinner at night, and somebody called and said, we need you over here, whatever district that in. You got to get up and go, because if you don't, you're going to catch all kind of trouble. They have to go through so much. And so I just know that I feel like that right now, to take care of their families and do their job, that they definitely need a cost of living. And I know we got the money to do it. Money coming in from everywhere, coming into Lubbock. And I know we're getting a lot of things done. A lot of streets are being paved, a lot of work are being done, a lot of buildings, and a lot of houses. And I saw in the paper this morning that Lubbock is getting short of houses. So you know somebody's moving into Lubbock, Texas. They coming in here. That's more revenue coming into Lubbock. More businesses are opening up. So I know that there are money. And I know that my city council people and the mayor, I know that they can get a raise. I know y'all gonna give them a raise. I don't know why I'm up here because I know they're gonna get one. Because if they don't get one, you got all these folks, well, I don't know about all of them, but I know about some of them. You're gonna be catching more, you know what, than ever, because the money is there. And I'm just pleading with you all, take a good look at it and see what can be done. And the next time I hear from you all, y'all will say, hallelujah, we gave them a raise. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Post. Okay, we have Barry Ann Lawson up next. Okay, thank you. Alexis Denbo? Sir, Alexis Denbo?
Hi there. I want to thank y'all for allowing us to come here today. I live at 5601 19th Street, which means I live at Lubbock Christian University. I am a current student there, so that's kind of exciting. I want to speak to raising the pay increase. As a student, I'm sure most of you know, we have student loans, and we've got these things that we have to keep paying for. But I know so many students and some people who leave my school, who go on to graduate school and who go into being activists and want to do good for our community, who can't do that if they're not being paid. They've got families that they're starting, or they're just trying to enter the world. And there's so many of us who are young, who just want to try and make differences in our community, who are in groups trying to do that. But without this pay increase, I'll be honest, as a student and as a young adult, I would never consider the position. I couldn't afford it. My family's not super well off. Never have been. I know a lot of students who are in the same position. And I'm gonna take a guess that they wouldn't be able to go into that position either. And so I just wanna say, I hope that you all consider that young people want to try, we want to do this with y'all. And we can't unless this pay increase happens. So I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, next we have Ms. Alice Lozada.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Alice Lozada, and I reside at 122 Avenue N. I've been a lifelong resident of Lubbock. I just wanted to say that I am a proponent of including compensation for a living wage for the mayor and city council members. This charter has not been changed since 1925, so it's long overdue. So I'm so glad for the work that you're doing in order for that to take place. I support this due to the extensive time that it takes to be on city council. We know that city council members attend meetings, budget meetings, staff meetings, meetings with their constituents, meetings and go on, and they're always on the phone, they're always talking, setting up more meetings. And so I know that they work possibly well over 40 hours a week. So I would just like to say that I believe that they are definitely in line for money to be given to them so that they can, for a living wage, so that they can make sure that they are representing their constituents to the best of their ability. This also will attract a diverse group of people to want to participate in the process of city leadership. So we're hoping that you all will consider that, and hopefully there will be a more diverse group of people and ages across the board, so that once the livable wage is given to them, that they would have more interest in this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Nicholas. And Nicholas, I can't read your last name, so come up and tell us your last name and where you live.
My name is Nicholas Richards. I apologize for my handwriting.
Sorry.
But yeah, I appreciate your time and also your eyesight. It's a real privilege to be in this room, not only with you, members of the committee, but with everybody who's spoken here tonight. It really is just, it's humbling. And I wanted to speak on the matter of increasing pay for city council and mayor. I agree with Mr. Hernandez, who used Laredo as an example first. I think that it's just under 50K for a city council member, and I think that's a good model to look at. But another model that we could look at in this regard is people showing up to do a job, right? If you show up, like my job, for example, if you show up and you don't do your job, you know, you don't do the responsibilities, you don't get paid, right? And a way to look at just the idea of paying our city officials, we could encourage them to bill their time better, right? There are so many ways that we could regulate this idea of paying our officials or giving them a raise for the job that they do. And I know that there are so many ways to consider this and ways to look at this. I'm just like Dr. Bergfeld, excited to see how this plays out. And it's just an idea that I think that, I don't want to say that there are no wrong answers, right? But there's room to disagree. And whatever way we choose to do this is a good way forward. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Okay, Joshua, your handwriting's about as bad as Nicholas. Joshua Shandles, is that right, or Shankles?
Shankles like
Thank you.
ankles.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for this time again. You know, before I really dig down into the specifics, I just want to acknowledge that this process that you're engaged in, and this is probably at the forefront of your minds, is one that you're going to have to build trust with the community. You're talking about making adjustments to our most fundamental documents, and so that's going to require the trust of the community to do your work effectively. I would also speak to Mr. Gomez's question to Mr. Hernandez because it actually helps me get into some of this stuff. Since it is the charter that we're talking to, the way that council would be held accountable is because of this document. This document governs and controls the obligations of the council. And so pay them or don't pay them, they're still subject to the terms and conditions as outlined in this document. And so, you know, that is the foundational issue, in addition to them being beholden to their constituents and winning elections. I'm going to try to not go over too many old treads and also cover some new ground, but I do want to hit a couple of things that have already been discussed because I think it's important to support and reflect the things that my community has already brought to you. First, I do want to cover the at-large member thing, and I do so appreciate this committee, you know, speaking to take that off the table, but
be brief on that. Be brief on that because we've already covered that ground. So be brief,
given
please.
as how this issue has come up in conversation at Coffee with the Mayor this week, in an AJ article this week, I think it would be appropriate for this committee to not only just drop the issue, but to issue a recommendation that it not come up as an outcome of this meeting. I do want to mirror the comments that have been spoken to regarding a living wage. I, you know, agree with the things that my neighbors have said already. And I would also speak to the business proposition that this is. I can't imagine I'm a business owner. I know many of you are business owners, and I can't imagine any business owner thinking that they would recruit and retain top talent on a part-time wage. You know, I don't think anybody would appoint an executive vice president at ABC Bank for $20,000 a year, which would be an adjusted for inflation figure to pay mayor and council. So I'm not sure where this logic comes from that because this should be a voluntary position and therefore we shouldn't pay them adequately for their service. The one does not follow the other. Somebody can serve and be paid well to do so. And I think most business owners would pay their top executives, the people with whom executive and legislative power are vested, well, be well compensated for their service. I would also add, and this goes to Mr. Gomez's point, that a living wage, we have a system of influence, political patronage right now, and a living wage, in fact, insulates those members from undue influence from outside parties and vests that interest where it most belongs, which is with the people whom they represent, who would be their employers as well as their constituents in this case. I want to go at the, forgive the frankness of this language, but the absurdity of the notion that policy making should be a part-time endeavor and is somewhat inconsequential. As have already been gone over, we're talking about astronomical figures of money and control. And it's not just the money, it's that these policy decisions have enormous influence over people's lives and businesses, and therefore this notion that, well, the city manager runs the city and we just make policy is absurd on its face when you think about it. As has already been expressed, United Way of Lubbock keeps figures on what a living wage and a reasonable wage are, and that has already been gone over. I would just mirror that that is a very reasonable thing to consider. And now I'm going to cover some new ground. I would like to speak to the issue of term limits, which have come up. As I said before in my public comment, we already have a system of term limits, and those are the elections themselves. And I believe that imposing term limits would in fact be a measure to exhaust the political capital of especially districts where not much exists. Again, having gone over the campaign contributions of the current city council, I can tell you that the rosters of districts 4, 5, and 6 are rather extensive, and 1, 2, and 3 are rather narrow. And so setting up a system by which representation that the people were perfectly happy with are forced out exhausts the political capital that exists within those districts to retain representation that they are happy with. As has already been spoken to from other people here, I also believe that the process to bring an ordinance before the council should be resolved. I agree with the logic that has been laid out, that this is an important tool, but one we would like to not be abused in the future. Therefore, I think this group should create a reasonable fixed percentage, and 4% has already been talked about, but a reasonable fixed percentage of voters to put the measure before the council. I think a process by which electronic signatures can be collected, accepted, and validated should be created. There are a number of ways to do that. I'm sure you guys can figure one out. And to create a provision by which a legality test must be passed before becoming eligible for a vote. And I would also add that because the recall section of our charter also has mechanisms in it which have flexible requirements for how many signatures are required, and that whole process that the process developed for one could be consistent for the other, and so that would be reasonable to look at both of those in conjunction, the recall and the ordinance. And then I know that the issue of how many ordinance readings have come before this group, and I would like to assert that I think that the readings should stay at 2 readings. It is, I can understand the concern that to move through business that the council may have, but as you guys all well know, we are currently engaged in the process of updating our codes, which are what sucks up a lot of council time. And once that process is finished, it is presumed that that will be off the books and the council would have time to work through their normal business more reasonably. So because the 2 readings allows more time for citizens to engage with this process, I think it should be preserved. And I would also address some of the circuitous logic that I've heard around this process, which is like, oh, well, you know, we only want to kind of put forward things which we think that the people will support. And that's valid. I can see where that kind of logic comes from. But I would also assert that it is one of the obligations of this committee, whatever positions you put forward, to be forthcoming and help the community understand why it is that you think those provisions are important. And so I think there's a little bit of you know, chicken and egg argument here that that I think you guys have a responsibility for explaining what it is that you ultimately bring forward out of this process. I'll thank you for your time and give somebody else the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Shankles. Okay, we've been going about an hour and 10 minutes. We've got 5 left. Y'all want to hang in there and hear from 5 more, or y'all want to? Y'all good? Everybody good? Okay. All right. Then we'll have Matt Cavazos come and speak to the council, the committee.
Hi, I'm Matthew Cavazos. I live off 1700 46th Street.
Good evening.
Policy making is too important a task to be passed off as voluntary service. The decisions that the city council makes affect over 200,000 people. It's a serious task, and such a serious role would typically be associated with serious value, one which would usually be paid in more everyday circumstances. But here, that is not the case. No, our democratically elected leaders are paid $25 a year, a month, and that has been the case since 1925. City Manager William Jarrett Atkinson makes an annual salary of over $300,000. David McCullough as well makes a salary of over $300,000. How do we justify appointed public servants making several times the average salary for these kinds of positions, while the elected officials that appoint them make next to nothing? Is it not peculiar that the division between these two extremes of pay are an election? The current pay system does less to prevent greed and corruption and does more to ensure the responsibility of representation is only affordable to those with property and capital. Policy making is a job, and it is a job we, the working class, want to be a part of. I would like councilships to be accessible to absolutely everyone, not to just high-earning professionals, business owners, and retirees. That is why I support an annual salary of up to $36,000 for all councilships and the mayor, and to be raised with the growth of the consumer price index with every election cycle, because it isn't charity, it is a responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Alex Scarborough. Good evening.
Alex Scarborough, 3009 Mesa, District 1. So I'm amazed when I look, first of all, commend the citizens that do show up, and the task y'all are put forth is amazingly huge and consequential. And so I just ask you to consider the years that the city has been successful and what's gone on. And I would say, be careful with your fiddling, because you could break something that maybe is not completely broken. I agree that $25 a month is ridiculous. And so I think we should pay higher for them. Y'all know strong mayor government opposed to a manager-led government. Is that considered at this point in this committee? Are y'all okay?
No.
Well, I would say that the current recall and ordinance position allows citizens access. I think it's a good use for citizens to feel like they can get to and have a voice in government if they don't agree with policies. And so I wouldn't change that aspect. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. Okay, our last in-person to speak to the committee is Joe Canastro.
There have been so many eloquent speakers and with wonderful statistics. I'm not going to bore you by going over those again and just tell you my personal opinion. I'm a lifelong citizen of Lubbock, and I've watched the city grow, and I've also seen some of the deficits that our city has. I really was appalled that our mayor and city council people are not paid a living wage. I didn't realize how bad it was. I know my city council person is on call 24/7. That's not a volunteer job. I mean, no matter how you look at it, they're working hard. They give out their cell phone numbers. People call them on the weekend, they call them all day, they call them at night. They need to be compensated fairly for the amount of work and effort and experience that they bring to their jobs. The other thing is, I am definitely in favor of any petition being brought to the city council to be vetted for legality. I saw the vote the city council made, and the reason they made that vote on the recent sanctuary city issue. And they said it's not legal, it's unconstitutional. I thought, well, okay. I read what they said, and I agreed after I read up on the reasons they said it. Instead, we are faced as a city with a very expensive election coming up. I'm not going to say that people shouldn't be able to petition the city on anything they think is valuable. However, it should be vetted by the city no matter what. It can save us all a lot of grief in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two people that have raised their hand via Zoom. Are we going to audio them in? Okay, we'll have Natalie Miller signed up to speak on Zoom.
Great, thank you. I live in the 800 block of Harvard Street. I want to thank you all for listening to comments and taking my comment. And I understand that while you all can't provide comment, I do pray wholeheartedly that you all are taking notes or either reviewing the in-depth data and information that was given to you by prior citizens who took the time to provide this data and for you and for serious review and consideration. There were a few comments that were made in reference to the pay not being provided due to keeping those in position of the mind frame that it's service to the community. I would challenge each of you to tell that to those who protect and serve our communities, i.e. the police officers. Tell them that perhaps a full-time job they should go out and get as service to the community should be kept pure and without pay. And perhaps we'll just give them $24 for the service that they give by protecting and serving our community. I think that we would all see that the largest group of people will leave their positions and we will all be left to police our own communities. You all heard from Miss Rose, who's of the young age of over 90 years old, who was in disbelief that in over 90 years, there hasn't been a change. You heard from a college student who stated that she couldn't even consider the position, and not because of her lack of interest or her lack for or desire for her city, but because of the debt and needing a living wage. I can, for one, can attest to that, having been asked whether or not I would run for a position, and I'm not admitting that I would, but I quickly would say there's no way I could do that because I couldn't afford it. In business, when companies compete with each other, what a consumer tends to get is innovation and a much better product. And it goes without saying that Lubbock's way of conducting business is outdated and overly benefited more affluent districts and further burdened less affluent districts by the continuation of racist zoning practices that continues to concentrate industrial zoning in those communities. It's time for Lubbock to try more innovation, and the cities deserve to choose a better representative and perhaps a more qualified representative. And I am of the belief that a living wage for our mayor and city council members will do just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. And we do have, to that comment earlier, we do have emails from citizens that have been distributed to the committee. And I would encourage anybody that's listening on Zoom or in the audience, it's citizen comments at mylubbock.us. If you have comments you'd like to send our way, that's always a good way to communicate. Last on the list, we have David Pugh on Zoom. We're going to audio him in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Try again.
Can you hear me? Am I on?
You're on. Go ahead.
All right. I'll try to keep this concise and brief. My name is David Pugh. I live on the northwest part of town by the Walmart. I want to say, first off, I think the city council should get a wage equal to that of any other employee of the city. From what I understand, that's about $60,000 median a year. Because what is the council but city employees? So they deserve at least that much. It would lower the barrier of entry for running and allow many more people from our community to run who otherwise wouldn't due to financial constraints or other things like that. And I want to touch on something mentioned by a member of the committee earlier. He asked, how will we keep the council independent if we paid them? And right now, from what I can see, the council seems to represent business interests, either of their own or their business buddies, over the people within our community. It seems that the council is beholden to commerce rather than community, and I don't know if I'd call that independent. Opening up these positions to people who share life experience with the average person in our community will make it equitable. We need to fix our charter to allow for a more diverse representative council. If that means more people run, good. More people running is never a bad thing. It offers choice, and that sounds better than what we've had so far. I also think the petition system should be amended so that illegal and unconstitutional proposals, ordinances, or measures cannot be forced into the ballot. I support changes to the charter to ensure unconstitutional legal laws can be automatically removed from the charter if they conflict with the state or federal law. This is a sensitive issue, so I also think this should be taken with transparency to the public. Likewise, there's been talk about cleaning up language and fixing grammar in the text of the charter. I agree that there should be that should happen, but even changing a comma or a period or anything can change the entire meaning of things. And I think that should be transparent to the public as well. And even though I think that's a thing that we should do, updating that language. I also think it's important to, in terms of how many people, I'm thinking out loud, how many people we need to sign petitions. And I think it should be consistent with the, in proportion with overall registered voters, rather than this moving target of how many people voted in the last election. And even though it's been said changing anything with the 83 order is off the table, to quote this committee, there's still been murmurs from other city officials recently, and I always want to state my opposition to changing the term of the mayor or adding any at-large seats. And I want to second Joshua Schenkel's call for the committee to recommend city officials drop this as well. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Pugh. All right, it's almost 7 o'clock. We have a few more agenda items. Let's take about a 5-minute recess if we could, just 5 minutes. Come back here at 7:05 and wrap the evening up. Thank you. is 7:07. I'm going to close the public hearing. I want to thank everybody for your comments. I appreciate you being brief. I appreciate you respecting other opinions. And we'll move on to the some more business items. Let's see, regular session 4.1 is discussion of any proposed amendments to the city charter as recommended by Lubbock citizens. This is opportunity to ask questions among each other, of our legal counsel. If we want to talk about anything we heard this in the last two public hearings. I'm going to start on my left this time, Mr. Lansdale. I'm going to open it up, and if you have anything you'd like to ask or recommend or talk about, now's your time.
I don't have anything specific, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate the comments from the public, and as serving in this capacity, I've been very impressed with what we asked as far as details and recommendations, and I was very impressed with what the public brought back to us tonight. So that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Gibson.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out and your comments. That's very much appreciated. All of you guys probably got the potential language for the gender specific. I am going to be bringing an amendment, and I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet, but we'll be discussing that up here. If you have read the charter, everywhere in the charter, it states councilman, period. And that bothers me just a little bit, especially in today's world, because women serve also. So I want to, and I want to make it broad where it just says council person. So not sure what that's going to look like, but I will be bringing an amendment to that effect. So that's one that I know that I will be bringing. We'll discuss it more as we go along, and everybody on the committee does have a copy of potential language. I don't know what it's going to end up looking like, but right now that's where we're at on that. Other than that, I don't have anything really as of right now. I'm sure I'll have more. Those of you that know me know I can't stop talking. So I'll have more, but I really do appreciate all of you being involved. Like I said last time, this is your charter. This is your document. So I really do appreciate the ones of you that have been involved from the start, and I hope you do stay involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson.
Not much to add beyond that, other than thank you for being out here again today. We appreciate all of your opinions, and the emails we've been receiving, those have been very, very helpful too. Looking forward to rolling up my sleeves and getting to work on this, starting right after this.
Great. Thank you. Mr. McDougall.
Same comment. Thank you for bringing specific recommendations tonight. That's what we asked for. So thank you for doing that. I'm particularly interested in Article 4, which is the referendum initiative. And so thank you to those that brought some recommendations on that. It's definitely something I think needs looked at. But other than that, Mr. Chairman, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to echo Ms. Gibson in acknowledging and appreciating the citizens for realizing that our city council and our mayor, those positions are some hard positions to fill, and understanding that it takes the finances and making sure that we have a diverse pool of people to want to be a part of that. So I really appreciate our citizens understanding that and voicing your concerns and bringing to us more information. I have really taken a deep dive into the charter, and it has some really interesting information in it that as a citizen in this great city, I had really no idea until I really took that deep dive into it. And so I will be very interested in looking at the grammatical errors and changes, and so that we're really get a real clear understanding of what this charter is saying to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer. Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know I was supposed to ask questions, so I'm sorry. But hey, you know, what can I say? Thank you all for coming. The comments by everybody is amazing, and we're taking it to heart. And just so you guys know, we're gonna be transparent, and you guys are gonna know everything because it's your charter, and we're here representing each district, and we're gonna come together and decide what's best together, and you guys will know about it. Again, thank you. Also, real quick plug, I serve on the advisory board. So if you guys want to serve on any boards and commissions, come see me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Well, the work begins now. We've spent 2 sessions listening to our community, listening to you. We did take notes. I think Ms. Miller asked us if we were taking notes. We did take notes. We do have documents. We're continuing to encourage people to send us emails. This will be the last public hearing we have. There'll be an opportunity for citizen comments at future meetings. If we do those, they will be timed. You'll have 3 minutes. These were untimed, obviously. I do appreciate everybody's respectful of other people here and keeping their time within a minimum. We did hear you. We listened to you. Our work does begin now. We will address things that the state law allows us to address as it relates to Article 4. And those will be discussed with legal counsel, probably maybe at our next meeting. But we will stay within the guidelines of the ruling that we had that the AJ mentioned recently and within state law. So just know that going forward. And I have nothing else to say, but appreciate your time, appreciate your courtesy. And with that, we'll move on to our next meeting is next Wednesday. Is that right? At 11 o'clock here in this dais.
It'll be at 11:30.
11:30. Okay, thank you. That's right, 11:30. April. We have minutes from the March 30 Charter Review public hearing. Any additions or corrections to those minutes?
Move for approval.
Second.
So moved. Second. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. All right. We have minutes from the April 7th Charter Review Committee meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Bill.
Second.
Thank you, Karen. All those in favor for the April 7th Charter Review Committee meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed. They'll stand approved. Okay, thank you for your time today. It is
Mr. Chair.
7:15. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Okay.
If we want to discuss a certain item, do we need to ask specifically for that to be on the agenda, or can we just discuss the charter?
Well, we have it posted broadly so that y'all would be able to discuss the charter itself.
Okay.
I would say that if you have something in particular, it probably would be helpful to go ahead and email Abby or Becky and let us know what it is so that we can be prepared to assist you with that topic. If it becomes something that becomes of interest, we may look at posting it specifically.
Okay.
But the way that we have it posted should encompass
Cover
anything that y'all
everything.
bring up.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody clear on that? Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions? Jimmy, you good? Okay. Well, now it's 7:16, Karen, and we are adjourned. Thank you.